256.010, turn 1 right, clear for takeoff.
1 right, clear to go, yeah, you're back.
Clear 4461, 1 right, welcome white.
Hey everyone, and welcome to FlightCast. This is an aviation podcast inspired by the mobile flight simulator Infinite Flight, which you can always find in the App Store for Apple devices and on Google Play for Android. I'm your host, Jason Rosewell, and with me as always in the FlightCast virtual studio is Skyhawk Heavy, the illustrious Mr. Mark Denton. Hey Mark.
Hey buddy, what's going on?
Well, I'm super excited today.
I know, and most people are when they actually talk to me, so you're welcome. I'm happy to do that for you.
Thank you, Mark. You took the words right out of my mouth.
I know, but
as you do every episode.
You talk to me, yeah, but you talk to me almost every day anyway, so.
No, I'm excited because it's a Monday, and we get to do a podcast recording. So,
I know.
It starts the week off right, and I'm looking outside at blue skies. It's supposed to be thunderstorming right now. It's not, and it's warm, and it's a very, very nice day for April 10th up here in Canada. Yeah,
and it's the same here in Alabama. It's blue skies, sunny. We have no rain, no thunderstorms in the forecast whatsoever. So chances are we'll get hit with a thunderstorm this afternoon.
For 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, here it lasts a little bit longer,
okay.
But for you, man, that's great considering, just 2 weeks ago, y'all had snow melting and everything else.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so anything,
how was your vacation?
Anything new? Oh, my vacation. Well, it was fabulous. It was hot, super hot. The people before us, for the spring breakers before we arrived in Florida, they were dealing with cold weather. So we were very fortunate at the end of March to have some nice hot weather, did Disney. It was great.
Were you tall enough to ride the kiddie rides?
Yes. Actually, we all were able to ride all the rides we want except for one, my youngest, who's just turning 7. Of course,
Yeah.
we don't grow him very tall in this family.
No.
He was just not tall enough to ride one of the rides in Dino Land or whatever they call it at Animal Kingdom, but he was okay with that because it still looked a bit too intense for him. But
I can't believe he's 7 already.
Yeah. In 4 or 5 weeks, he's 7. He turned 7.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Mark, we had the privilege of watching Sun and Fun from Instagram. Since we weren't there, unfortunately.
Yes.
Let's put on put that on the bucket list, or perhaps the to-do list for next year.
Yeah, I mean, I've been several times, and especially when I lived down in Clearwater, Florida, which is just west of Tampa. But Sun and Fun is always amazing. There's no way anybody could go and ever be disappointed.
Well, that may be so, and you may have been there several times, but you've never been there with me.
Yes, I've never been there with an unaccompanied minor, so that would definitely be interesting, and a lot of fun. But I'll go ahead and let you know, I will not let you sit on my shoulders to watch the planes on the runway.
We'll see about
we'll
that.
have to find some. Yeah, we'll have to figure something out for that. But no, seriously, man, it is so much fun. It's awesome. I mean, all the new aircraft that are debuted there, a lot of the older aircraft, the warbirds, the vintage aircraft, the tail draggers, the blues are there this year. But I also enjoy walking through the hangars and going to each of the vendors' exhibits, to the vendors' booth, and seeing the different things that are coming out for aviation. My handheld GPS, I bought it last time I went to Sun and Fun. And so, man, it's always so awesome. However, I will say that I am pushing and pushing and pushing. And I think it's going to happen, but probably it'll be hopefully for next year. I will be there, and you'll probably be there as well, maybe even Tyler. Representing Infinite Flight.
Ooh, I hope so.
At a booth, yeah.
Fingers are crossed.
And of course, FlightCast.
I'd like to schedule some interviews, and one of the cool things about seeing everybody at Sun and Fun was there's all these people that you follow on Instagram are all like hanging out with each other. And so I think that's a perfect segue to introduce our guest today. How about you?
I absolutely agree.
All right, so Angela Sells is known to many online as Southern Fly Girl. This aviator, blogger, cancer survivor, aviation photographer, and mother of 3 is our third guest to join us for our Women in Aviation series. Angela, thank you so much for joining us here on FlightCast today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, why don't we start by having you tell us how you developed a love for aviation. Where did it start for you?
Well, it goes back probably to my childhood, like a lot of people. I grew up in Pensacola, Florida, home of the Blue Angels, and I got to watch them all the time, fell in love with them. And then I joined the Air Force when I got out of high school. Didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I decided I would take that path and see where it took me. And lo and behold, I ended up at the only Air Force base that didn't have a flight line.
Oh.
So not
bummer.
So,
how does that work?
Yeah, how is that even possible?
We stored moon rocks, so yeah. But aside from that, while I was in tech school, I was up at Shepherd Air Force Base.
I'm going to have to stop you right there. Moon rocks?
Yeah, they used to be all secret about that stuff, so they stored them underground at the base I was at. So, and I understand that base is no longer around these days, which is kind of sad. But, what's an Air Force base without a flight line?
Well, they say moon rocks, but I still have doubts as to whether we've been to the moon.
Mark and I are in that very skeptical camp of moon landings.
Well, I'll have to say I never saw them personally, so we'll just leave it at that.
Okay, so sorry to interrupt.
It's all good.
Please continue.
Yeah, no, so I was stationed up at Shepherd Air Force Base in northern Texas, lower Oklahoma, whatever you want to call it there. And they had, a lot of planes coming and going there, and I would sit on the flight line and watch the C-5s there do touch and goes in the evenings, and it was just a beautiful sight. Just loved it. Learned to identify, the planes from that. Never really thought about flying myself, but always loved the planes. And you get busy with life and kids and family, and it was just never a thought after I got out of the Air Force. And, I hit one of those big O birthdays, and I said, there's a whole lot less life in front of me than behind me, and I want to do something that I've never done before. And I started looking around and found out that you could take discovery flights in the small airplanes. And I was like, there's one just up the road from me, like 3 miles. And I was like, I didn't even know that airport was there. So I called them. I said, hey, can I sign up and do this? And they're like, yeah, come on down. Oh my gosh, from the first time that plane took off, I just fell in love with it. It was the most amazing thing I have ever experienced. And from that moment on, it's been nonstop for the last 3 years, just in love with the aviation, the flying. And I had no idea when I took that discovery flight that I would actually be able to control the plane. And I thought, I'm just going to go up and I'm going to have a flight and it's going to be like a sightseeing tour. But when I took the controls and got to maneuver it around and fly over my house and all the fields up in North Carolina, I was like, this is for me. I'm going to do this.
Very cool.
So, and that's where it started, yeah.
It's amazing that you were around aviation that much leading up to this point, and the thought finally crossed your mind after this milestone birthday that, hey, I should probably try it.
I know, out of the blue. Trust me, my family was like, you want to do what?
That's awesome.
And I said, yeah, why not? And like I said, it was just so amazing and so refreshing and something that I never experienced. And it was something that I wanted to share with other people because I thought, wow, there's this whole other life with aviation that you don't even know about. I'm terribly jealous of young people that know at 16, 17 that that's what they want to do, and they have these careers in aviation.
Oh, me too.
Because they've got their whole. It just opens up a whole world for them. And when they're young, I mean, when you get to be my age, and you're like, "What are you going to do with it?" And I'm like, "I just want to experience it. I want to fly to all these small FBOs around and experience the people and the planes, because you find these awesome little planes that they have hangared there that they just fly there and they don't really fly anywhere else. I've seen some awesome, older Cubs biplanes just sitting in the hangars, and you get to talk to these people. I want to share that with the people that aren't as experienced in this world as we are. I want other people to know that this world exists and maybe open up their eyes to it.
Yeah, I love that. And, it's funny, speaking of, being jealous of people that are starting their journey in their teens in aviation. I also talked to, he flies here locally where I live in Ontario as a seaplane tour pilot. So he's a commercial pilot, but on they have an airplane here called the Bush Hawk XP, made by a company that was local here before they went out of business, and they fly Cessnas as well on floats. And I said, Matt, are you, what's the next step? Is this a stepping stone for you? And he said, no, this is exactly what I want to be doing. I get to fly small aircraft. I get to do what I love. I don't have to fly long distances, and just do checklists all the time. I get to experience this beautiful scenery. So it's interesting how you see what goals people set for themselves. And I assumed that this was a stepping stone for him, but he just loves flying small planes, and that's where he wants to stay.
Yeah, that's something I would like to do once I finish up things. I'd like to go and get a seaplane rating. I just think that our endorsement, and try that out for a change. I think that there's a lot of beautiful places that you can take those.
Yeah, you hear people just saying they fly on floats, and then that's all they want to do. How did you? Let's talk about your PPL. How did your private pilot journey unfold?
Well, as it's still unfolding, I'm about 3 years into it. When I first started out about 3 years ago, I have had about 50 hours into it whenever I got diagnosed with breast cancer, and my journey came to a pause, we'll call it. At the time, I didn't know it was going to be a pause, but it took me, about a year and a half to get cleared by the FAA. And I just got that clearance again at the end of September last year. And I waited until the weather was a little bit better in January to start flying again. And I'm getting closer. I've got my night flying to get behind me and my solo cross country, and then hopefully by summer I'll be taking that check ride and getting that behind me finally. Awesome.
So speaking of that, you've been very open online with your battle with breast cancer. So can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, I can. It's not something I was really wanting to be open about to begin with, but when I started the blog, I wanted it to be about the adventure. I wanted people to know that life isn't over, when you hit those big O birthdays, that sometimes it can just be beginning. You get your kids grown and you've got, things that you wanted to do that you couldn't do before. And I wanted my kids to know that even though they're on a path now, that can change. You don't have to think that the path that you have is the one that is going to stay there for you. That life gets busy, you have kids, and then you're like, okay, I can do something else now. So that was kind of where the blog started. And as, the breast cancer came, it was very traumatizing to me. And being so close to getting my pilot's license at that time, it was devastating. And I thought, how can this happen now? It wasn't that, why me? Because I don't think I'm any less deserving than anyone else out there that gets it. And I just wanted to know, how does this happen? Why does this happen? And there's no answers out there for that. But once I went through the process, I felt like I needed to share. I needed people to know that, what it's like to go through it, the emotion that you hit, the milestones that you can hit, and that you can get through it. And then once you get through it, you can start life again. It's not an end, it's a pause. And that's where I'm about it and trying to share that with people so that they would know there can be life after breast cancer. And I'm proof of that. It took a long time with FAA. They're a little slow. They kept losing my paperwork, but I finally got connected with them through AOPA. They were very helpful in helping me connect with the right people and being able to get that journey going a little bit more. It took a while, but when that finally came, I tell you what, it was the most excited I had been in 2 years.
Yeah.
So I got that paper and I was like, all right. And even the FAA medical examiner was like, you need to get out and fly. He's like, get off the computer and go fly. I said, okay.
Well, yeah, I read your blog post whenever you opened the envelope and how hesitant you were to read it because you were just actually about to leave for Sun and Fun, Warbird weekend, right, in Atlanta. I was getting ready to leave for Atlanta Warbird weekend. Yeah, and so how did that work? Because you were actually denied, and they were able to add you under some special provision.
Right. So I have a special issuance medical certificate. With the new changes to the medical that they've done, I'm not really sure how all that's going to affect me, but from what I understand, even people with special issuance medical certificates can continue under that whenever they get that completed. Okay. So it was, so for the weekend, I had a whole new outlook on life going into the Atlanta Warbird weekend. I was flying high and I could not have been any more excited. And then, all these other, oh crap, what am I going to do? Things hit me. I need an instructor. Where am I going to fly? What am I going to do? And, it's exciting. And then all of a sudden you're nervous because you have to start over again in some respects. And being 2 years out of it, whenever I started back, I was really afraid that I was going to forget, okay, how do I fly again? But it was funny because my first flight back, I was nervous. But when I started pre-flighting, I was like, this is awesome. I am back, and this is fantastic. And I was a little nervous at first, but you know what? As soon as the plane lifted off the ground and I was back in the air, I'm like, yes.
Yeah. Do you feel like it came back to you pretty quickly, or do you feel like you did regress a lot in those 2 years?
The flying part, no. The landing part, yes. The studying, yes and no. Because my written expired during that 2-year time frame, and so I had to start studying and retake it. So I just got that finished last week before, and I've got that behind me again. And I'm so excited that was like such a relief to get the written behind me again, so I could focus just on flying.
Nice. Well, I'm sorry that it took us until April of 2017 to talk to you because Mark and I were both at Warbird weekend this past year.
I saw that, and I hate that I missed you guys there.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? So we were there with a bunch of other Infinite Flight moderators and one of the owners, and we just spent the weekend hanging out together, and it was a fun weekend, and it would have been cool to include you, but you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. No, it's great to connect with you guys. And I love the Atlanta Warbird weekend, the way that they do that. Such a small venue. It's intimate, get up close to the planes. That's one of my favorite places to photograph.
Yes.
And you got some great ones for sure.
Well, thank you.
And you're right there on the runway, that's just awesome to be able to get even closer to the action. Instead of just on the flight line. So
yeah, it's fantastic.
I'll definitely be going back again this year.
Oh yeah. That's a great one. We'll have to connect at that one next year or later this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason, you going to be making it?
I don't know.
I mean, we got to do IF ModCon 17. So
we do. Atlanta is the easiest spot for us to do that, I think.
It really is. It really is. Well, for you and I especially, because, we just stay with Steven.
Exactly. Yeah, we've got a friend who lives there who's actually an Infinite Flight moderator as well. So, well, maybe we'll see you there again, or maybe we'll see you next year at Sun and Fun. Who knows?
Oh, yeah, that'd be awesome. Sun and Fun is one of my favorites, just on the large scale. But there's so much to see and do at Sun and Fun. It's one of the things that I think you really do need that whole week so that you can see it all. I know it's not as big as Osh, but it's pretty cool.
And are you planning on going to Oshkosh this year?
I'm still trying to work that out. I really, really want to, but it's one of those things I have to divide my time right now. It's more important for me to finish up my PPL before anything else.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to take things a step at a time rather than trying to cram it all in at once. So we'll see how it works out. I'd really like to, and I've made some really good connections through photography and through aviation to start to understand how to do it. To me, Oshkosh is one of those things that's so overwhelming that if you don't have some kind of direction or guidance, then it's just a little overwhelming to figure out how to do Osh, is what I call it.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, that's definitely something on the bucket list for sure. Is Oshkosh.
Oh yeah, definitely on mine. So one of the things I thought that I would, I've got that 2-year time frame in there where I couldn't fly in between flying, and that's where the photography started picking up. And I just wanted to, tell you that was how I found my way to stay connected to aviation. I was so, devastated with breast cancer that I thought, if I never get to fly again, how can I still be a part of this community? And that's when I decided to figure out how to use my camera off of the automatic mode. So while I was home recovering for breast cancer surgery, I took an online class, and every day I watched an episode and figured out how to use my camera and practice with it. So whenever I got done recovering, I started going to the air shows and started photographing the planes. And I really wanted to get some, figure out how people do these beautiful photographs with sunsets and beautiful skies. Cause I'm like, how do you get access to these? And so that's when I started doing some aviation workshops in Atlanta. Warbirds in 2015 was the first year I got to do that. And that's how I started learning how to do that with a group of friends.
Nice.
And I just found that was an excellent way to stay connected. And it's like the pilot community. Aviation photography is a very small community as well. And it's nice kind of being able to blend those two together. It helps with my blog. It adds to the photography on there. It's amazing, because at one point I was like, if I never get cleared, am I going to be content with just doing photography? And I kept telling myself no in hopes of getting cleared. But then I was like, I'm really enjoying this. And now I'm at a point where it's nice to be able to blend both. I just love both sides of it, because I've had people ask me, well, which do you like more? And I can't say that I like one better than the other, but it is nice to fly with somebody else who can fly, because I like to take pictures. Mm-hmm. And you can't fly and take pictures at the same time.
Right. Yes. That's when you need lots of pilot friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Or autopilot.
or autopilot, yes.
Or autopilot, yeah.
If I could put in a request, I'd love to see more of those long exposure nighttime shots.
Oh yeah, those are the best, and that takes a lot of practice. But yeah, I love doing that as well. And thank you.
You sort of segued us right into photography. So why don't we talk about that for a second? Like I said, you're, and for those listening, it's Instagram.com/SouthernFlyGirl, or just look up at SouthernFlyGirl on Instagram. And do you have any other accounts that you want to show off your photography at while we've got you on the microphone?
I have the blog, which is SouthernFlyGirl.com.
Okay, so SouthernFlyGirl.com, and then your Instagram it looks like you spend a lot of time on there, so that's probably a good spot to see you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about gear for a second. What type of camera and lenses are you using right now?
I have the Canon 70D. Most of the time at the air shows, I'm using the Tamron 150 to 600 millimeter lens. And that's my standard air show lens, other than just the standard oh, just went brain dead. Sorry.
The 18 to 55.
Thank you. That would be the one.
That's what Mark's here for.
Yeah. Pick up my slack.
And Angela's the one that I go to for the advice on cameras.
Oh, I don't know that I'm the best person for that, but I can tell you what I've tried and what works for me.
Well, nobody else will talk to him, so.
Yeah.
Mark, have you heard of Live Flight for Infinite Flight?
Yeah, man. I've used it to track flights and to see which regions and airports are busy before, planning my flight.
Right. Well, as you probably know, a new version of Live Flight is now available at liveflightapp.com. This new version is better than ever and has been rebuilt from the ground up. With a new design, more flight stats, a search feature, and airport information, tracking and planning your flight is easier than ever.
Oh, man, I know. And now with the new downloadable KML files, you can download your flight data to any Earth browser, such as Google Earth. It's so cool.
Absolutely. And if that wasn't enough, you can now subscribe to Live Flight Horizon, a new service for only $1.99 a month that provides real-time, worldwide airport information such as weather, runway data, and charts. It also allows you to search for flights, active ATC frequencies, and airports. And as a Live Flight Horizon subscriber, you'll also get much longer online sessions, and you'll be helping Cam to keep developing and improving this great app.
So guys, make sure you head over to liveflightapp.com to give it a try, and also subscribe to Live Flight Horizon. It will make your infinite flight experience so much better.
Live Flight is now available in the App Store for iOS. And now back to the podcast. Cool. So you're using the you got an awesome camera body, and do you have any plans on expanding your lens collection, or are you really happy with that so far?
Well, I'm happy with it. I'd like to have an extra Canon body and a couple other lenses, but it's one of those things I have to divide my funds between flight lessons and photography, and right now it's going to flight lessons.
Yes.
So.
Well, and as soon as you get into buying things like lenses, they're not cheap.
Oh no,
it's
yeah,
hobby.
You can put as much money into them as you want to, that's for sure. But and it's one of those things that you get around other people and other photographers, and they have these massive cameras and these massive lenses. And what I've learned at the workshops is use what you have. The best camera that you have is what you have with you. And it doesn't matter what that is, it captures the moment that you want.
Nice.
So I try to tell myself I'm okay with just what I have.
Mark, you need to repeat that as your mantra.
Yeah, but the iPhone camera just doesn't cut it. And then the little white pocket camera I use, is, when you're 6'5" and 200 and too much and you're carrying around a camera to try to take, aviation photography or try to do aviation photography, and the camera is smaller than your hand. Number one, you're scared you're going to drop it. Two, the lens just doesn't reach out there and grab anything unless you're like right up on it. When I did those pictures of the Delta A321 a couple of weeks ago after they took delivery, I mean, I was just fortunate to know the people over at Signature Flight to where I could get out on the ramp, essentially right next to the taxiway and runway, which is the only reason I was able to get that close. But
hey, connections help for getting close. I'm telling you.
Oh, absolutely,
for sure.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I'm that's going to be my next purchase for sure is the camera. And Jason, I've talked to you, and Angela knows. I've got the camera narrowed down. Now it's just the lens, and so I don't know.
Well, and that's where I said, try renting a couple of different ones and get a feel for what you like, because that's what I did in the beginning. Rent them, check them out in an air show, and a lot of times the photo companies, the local photo shops will use your rental fees towards the purchase if you decide that you want to buy one from them.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah.
That was the same advice that we had Jan Jasinski on the show, Photo Jan from Instagram, and he said the exact same thing. Definitely go out and rent. Rental costs really, I looked into it, they're really not that much. And you can at least up here you can do a nice telephoto lens for taking pictures of airplanes for $60 for an entire week.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh really? That's
it's fairly reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah. What was that one that he told us that he used? It was like a $20,000 lens or something like that.
Oh, he rented one where the retail price was in the tens of thousands, the 15.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
It was like 1,000 or 1,200 millimeter or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah. So, Angela, the goal of our Women in Aviation series really is to celebrate and highlight some of the women that are doing really cool things in the industry and just in general aviation, but just also to find cool people that share a passion for flying. And your passion is so obvious as people. I really encourage people to read Angela's blog. It's a great read. There's tons of emotion behind your writing, and you talk about your bucket list often. So what's left on your bucket list when it comes to flying? I mean, obviously the PPL is right at the forefront and you can probably taste it. It's so close.
And then meeting me, that's on the bucket list.
Of course, you've checked that off virtually anyways. So what's next?
Well, thank you. It's funny thinking about that and talking about the blog. When I got breast cancer, while going through that, I decided that I didn't want to wait, regardless of how I was feeling, how things were going. So I did some of those things that I really wanted to do. I flew in the Waco biplane when I was up at the Warbirds over the beach in Virginia Beach. Took that flight over the beach. I recently just went up in a tail dragger for the first time, and I have to tell you, that was the most fun I've had in an airplane yet. I have an awesome instructor, and he took me up and got me into some unusual attitudes. We got to do some spin recovery training. It's something I've been dying to do. I just thought that would be fantastic. And it was everything I thought it was. I got down and I said, that's my first endorsement I want as soon as I get my PPL. And that was in the Champ.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is the Aranca Champ was the airplane my grandfather was flying when he crashed, and actually that crash took his life. And I was only 2 years old, so I didn't really get to know him. But yeah, he owned a Piper Cub on floats for a very long time, the registration of which I have tattooed on my arm. And so, but it was an Aranca Champ. So when I saw your blog post, I was like, oh man, wow. It's, it makes things, there's those little connections that you make. And there's emotional connections sometimes. So it's like, man, it sort of just hits you a little bit more than it otherwise would if you had said, I did some tail dragger training in a Cub or whatever.
Right.
Or so yeah, very, very cool. And so you did the tail dragger, and then I cut you off. So what's left for you going forward?
Well, one of the other things that I did that was on my bucket list was to fly in a helicopter. I had never got a chance to do that. When I went out to visit, my oldest son is stationed in Phoenix, and I decided to go up to Sedona and take a helicopter flight out over the gorgeous desert up there. Doors off, photographer's ship, and it was unbelievable. It was absolutely it was just so unique. That's just something that I think that I would like to try at some point after flying in one. Just as an observer, I would like to get some hours in a helicopter. So that's on the bucket list. And I think I want to do some skydiving. At least once, I've got to try it. It's just one of those things.
Nice.
Yes, I want to fly a plane, but why not jump out of one too? I'm just
Amen
saying.
to that. Oh, I totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah, I'm trying to find me a Humvee chute so I can go skydiving myself.
I do have lots of goals, and it's really funny because prior to starting to fly, I tell people I kind of had forgotten that I could dream. I didn't have, you feel like over a certain age that, do you still set those kind of goals? Do you still, can you still have adventure? And my answer is yes, you can. Because one of the first things that I decided I wanted to do once I get my PPL is I want to go island hop from the Virginia coast down through North Carolina and just write about and photograph those areas out along the coast. And then I want to come back in and go and talk and photograph some of the smaller places And I want to share that with people. I want them to know that, these wonderful little places exist, especially the places that have, the $100 hamburger runs, or $100 barbecue plate run. That's for you, Mark.
In North Carolina.
In North Carolina, that's right.
And you got to do First Flight. You got to do First Flight Airport.
Yes, absolutely. That's on the list as well.
Yeah. So it sounds like, to be able to photograph all these awesome places along the beautiful coast of North Carolina, you're going to need a safety pilot for that. So we just need to schedule the time.
Absolutely.
There's Mark being bashful again. Yeah. Oh, very cool. I love hearing these stories and what you aspire to do in the future. So thank you for sharing all of that with us. If you could give any advice to aspiring pilots, especially those of us who might be past our career pilot phase, what would it be?
Well, I think that probably the thing for me, sorry, trying to think about how to put that. Well, for people like me, you reach a point, your kids are older, you're grown. Sometimes by the time they're out of the house, you have a little bit more, money to spend than you did when all the kids were home. And being able to, do something you've never done before, don't think that you can't do it. You can always, find the time, even if you're older, whenever it happens like me. It doesn't mean you have to look at it as a career. Do it for fun. Do it as a hobby. Do it to take your family somewhere. There's just so much more you can you do if you open up your mind to it.
Very cool. So what have been some of your favorite airplanes to photograph? You talked about the SR-71 on your blog. What drew you to that?
Well, I loved SR-71. When I was in the Air Force, I got to see it on its retirement flight back in the early 80s. And I remember they tuned into the plane, and it was over New York, and we were in San Antonio, Texas. And it was over Texas in no time. I mean, that thing was so fast and so amazing. I was just blown away by it. So that was my first encounter with it.
It's on final over New York into Texas.
Exactly. So that just and just the shape of it, the beauty of it, the history behind it, and to think that in the 80s, that plane was already 20 years old. And I just think that it's just one of the most amazing planes that they've ever built. It still holds several records. But let's see, my favorite planes to photograph, I love the old warbirds. There's just something about them. They have so much character, so much history. They're just beautiful. They have texture. You see the rivets on them. You see the beautiful paintings that they have on them, the schemes, the colors. And to me, they just roll of history across them. And I just love it because to me, I always want to photograph them. I always tell people when I'm writing on my blog that they're talking to me, because I want to go, what have you seen? Where have you been?
The warbird whisperer.
I suppose, but they do. They're rich with history and what they've gone through to restore these planes, to bring them back to life, for us to be able to see them, and the privilege of being able to photograph them is something that I don't take for granted. And I also know from experience recently that they may not be around tomorrow. One of my favorite T6 planes, it was a highly modified Super 6, just crashed in North Carolina, and it's gone forever. And you just don't know when something's going to happen and they're not going to be here. So I feel like I have a personal responsibility when I photograph these to show the beauty of them, to preserve it for the next generation.
That is awesome. The warbirds are my favorite as well. I mean, yeah, it's awesome to sit there and to be able to take pictures of these aircraft that are they're so old as far as the years that they've been flying, but like you said, the history that they carry with them. And you have to wonder, where has this warbird been? What kind of action has it seen? But then the thing that I love is when they're flying and you just hear that sound of those engines. So they're just distinct, very distinct sounds.
Yeah, nothing like the purr of a Merlin engine.
Well, if you're a P-51 fan.
Yeah, well, then there's also the lovely Corsairs as well. But
that's right, the Corsair, the whistling death.
That bent wing beauty is something to see and hear in the sky, that's for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think probably one of my favorite venues for that, and I don't know if you guys have been up there, is the Warbirds over the beach at the Military Aviation Museum. If you haven't been there, that's definitely an awesome spot to hit. It's a grass strip. And some of my favorite shots have come from that venue.
Where's that at?
Virginia Beach.
No, I've never been to that.
Oh, you definitely.
There's so many that I want to go to. So many I want to go to.
Well, the unique thing about theirs is all of the ones that they have in their museum there fly. So they have everything back from the original planes, like the Wright brothers flew, to your more modern P-51s, Corsairs, and everything in between. So it's fantastic.
That's awesome. I'll definitely have to. Jason, you might want to write that down. We got to put that on the list.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Of course not.
Just joking. And you know what? Actually, guys, I want to, before we wrap up today, I want to give a little shout out to Boeing 777X on the community forum, who did ask about what photography equipment Angela was using. So we've answered that before we get to our community questions already. And why don't we ask a couple more? Mark, I'm not sure if you have any standing by from our IFATC team on Slack, but I'm gonna start by asking Mix 56 Awesome from the Infinite Flight community forum is wondering if you've used Infinite Flight yet.
I have not, but I have looked it up and I have been checking it out. And since I just finished up between studying for my written exam and been flying and working and all of that, I haven't had a chance to do it, but that's one of the first things I'm going to do this week now that I have some time. Check it out and use it.
Well, make sure you hassle Mark, because he can hook you up with a live subscription and we can go fly somewhere together.
Well, that would be fantastic.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's just a little bonus for being on FlightCast.
Awesome. Thank you.
Let's see here. Well, we've already actually asked a question from Jet Airways 995 as well, and that was out of the many you've spotted, what one would you rate the best? And again, any time spent on your blog, one would understand that you love seeing the SR-71, and then you've mentioned a few other ones. Mark, anything from Slack?
Nothing from Slack other than the one from Tyler that's not really worth mentioning, to be honest with you. But I sent
well,
you the
you know
text
what?
of it.
I'll mention the reason why Tyler asked this question, and that is that Mark, you did a little logo up for Southern Fly Girl, didn't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to give it up to Mark. I had been in need of a logo and I didn't ask at all, and he was so gracious to design the most absolutely perfect logo I could ask for.
Aw.
It is. It's absolutely perfect.
Way to go, Mark.
And ended up with two of my favorite colors, black and pink.
There you go.
Yeah. I'm glad you liked it.
And what was so nice about it was he incorporated the breast cancer along with just the aviation. He just kind of brought it all together for me in such a way that was just very beautiful.
Well,
so I appreciate that more than he'll know.
You know,
I'm glad you liked it.
I love hearing Mark's voice in a rare moment of actual humility. It's rare. And before Mark can respond to that, I'm just going to move on here. I love, Angela, how you've been able to be so transparent with us and talk about your your fight with cancer, but also what that meant for you as an aviator at this stage in your life. And so thank you for being so transparent. I recently was at my son read a speech in front of, he's in 4th grade, or grade 4 as we say here in Canada, and he won for his class, so he got to read his speech with other schools at our high school here locally, and we had a blast. I was way more nervous than he was, but there was another presenter who talked about, a little bit older than my son, who's 10, almost 10, who talked about, it was very clear at the start of her speech that it was about her mother, who was her hero, and her battle with breast cancer. And I thought, as soon as she started, I thought, oh, this better not get too serious, or I'm going to lose it right here in front of everybody. And she didn't get super serious, but she talked about how her family and those who were around her mom included her in all of the doctor's appointments, and they were just very, she said, and as a child saying this, she said it was so nice to be included. And even though some of the things were hard to hear, she felt like she was a part of the process, and that helped her deal with a lot of the feelings that she otherwise might not know how to deal with. And so I like hearing stories like yours, because my mind kind of goes back to that, and it says, you know, so many of us, if we haven't gone through it already, are going to, whether it's our own experience or whether it's someone very close to us. Just to be able to hear from you being so honest and transparent about your struggles with that and how they affected you, I think it's just nice that we can, you've clearly talked about this a lot, and that helped you, maintain your composure and just tell us like it is. And, cancer is horrible and nobody likes it. And it would be nice if someday it didn't exist, but until then it does. And I just want to thank you again for sharing with us.
Oh, thank you. I think it's important for, people to know, because at the time that I was going through it, I didn't know anybody that had it. Nobody in my family had it. No one that was around me had. And I didn't know who to talk to, didn't have anybody to talk to about it. So, the struggles were real. And, like you were talking about the child that went through it, I did the same thing. My youngest is 12 now. And I made sure he was a part of that and understood, because it was extremely emotional for the entire family. Yeah. And I think if you don't help them along, then they don't understand how to deal with it either. Why is mommy sad? Why is, what's going to happen? Is she going to die? And, we don't know those answers, but if you go through it together, then, you find strength in that. And I think I have found healing in sharing my story and being able to share it with others. I want people to know I'm here. If somebody wants to talk about it, absolutely. I will definitely be a cheerleader.
Awesome. Well, we will certainly share your story via this podcast with all of our listeners, and you can feel free to do the same with your Instagram viewers if you like.
Absolutely.
Angela, is there anything you wanted to add before we wrapped up today?
I can't think of anything else. It's been awesome hanging out with you guys and getting to meet you virtually.
Likewise.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks so much.
It's been great.
Everyone, don't forget to check out FlightCast Cafe for more of this episode from the before and after, and some unedited stuff as well. That's our show. Thanks again to Southern Fly Girl, Angela Sells, for being with us today. You can read more about Angela's story at southernflygirl.com, and definitely throw a follow her way on Instagram at Southern Fly Girl. Thanks as always for listening, and if you haven't already, head over to the App Store or Google Play and download Infinite Flight. For more of the podcasts, please visit our website and be sure to subscribe on iTunes or YouTube. You can find us on social media at FlightCast Audio. FlightCast is brought to you by Linkhouse Media on the web at linkhousemedia.com. To cover the fine print, FlightCast is not affiliated with Infinite Flight or Flying Development Studio. I'm Jason Rosewell. Thanks for listening, and happy landings.